every single Friday, same time, 11:15. Love it if you join me every single Friday. As always, if you've got any questions, comments, feedback, anything, put them in the comments. If it's live, I'll respond. If not, I'll always comment back to you after the video. So thanks for joining me. Today's question comes from Christian, and she says, my husband and I would like to buy our first home together, but prices have gotten ridiculous. Are we wrong to think that they're too high to buy? And I'll give you a little feedback on Christian. Christian has lived here the majority of her life. She grew up here, and so that's kind of where that perception is coming from. I've got a lot of opinions on this, and they're all over the board, right? I think the question of have they gotten too ridiculous to buy, you can sense in the word ridiculous that there is emotion involved, right? And I think that anytime you make a decision based on emotion, you're probably going to make a bad decision. So let's try to pull back and make a logical decision. Are they high? Well, they're certainly a heck of a lot higher than they were 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, right? A lot of the sales that I've gone into in the last handful of years, these people have bought for 150, 200, whatever it is, and they're selling for 400 or 500, which is obviously an incredibly high difference between the two. It's a high price, and it's great for sellers, but it's not necessarily so great for buyers, especially first-time home buyers. If you're going to purchase a $500,000 home today, but you've got a $500,000 home to sell, you're kind of in a, well, I shouldn't say kind of, you're absolutely in a better situation than every other first-time home buyer is when they're coming in and buying that same property for $500,000. So if you're a first-time home buyer, it can be really challenging. And I'll tell you, if you have lived in this area for a long time, you are making, I mean, the wages in this area, in this county, are typically lower than most of the wages you're going to see anywhere south of here. You go to West Palm, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, anywhere between here and Miami, and you're going to see higher incomes on average in those areas than you're going to see here. Are there people here with higher incomes? Absolutely. Are there people there with lower incomes? Obviously. But on average, you're going to see higher incomes down south and lower incomes in this county. So compared to the income that most people in this area are bringing in, yes, I would agree prices have gotten high. But really that begs a bigger question, which is, does it make sense to buy? And I think you really need to kind of look at two different perspectives before you say yes or no. The first perspective is it intelligent to buy in this area in this time? And in this area and in this time, you know, area-wise, I can tell you that nobody knows what Port St Lucie is. I didn't know Port St Lucie when I moved here. I moved from Washington State. I was in the Army for 10 years. We did a lot of research to find an area that was safe, near the beach, had no state income tax. We loved Florida. Vacation to us, or when we thought of vacationing for us, it was Florida. That was what it was. And so we thought, man, we can live in a place that's got palm trees and the beach and great summers and winters, and it's great all the time. And we got a pool in our back. Of course we want to live there. Well, everybody else has thought that as well. And I remember, you know, I moved here in 2019. I remember it was like 2020, 2021. It was only 3-4 years ago when a news article came out and said, hey, we're over 200,000 for the first time. And just 20 years ago, we had gone over 100,000 for the first time. Well, I read the other day that we're at 256. So literally in about 23, 24 years, we've gone from less than 100,000 people to over 250,000 people. That is ridiculous growth. And if you've watched over the last probably 5-10 years, that's at least how long I've been watching, you'll see that Port St Lucie is consistently one of the fastest growing big cities in America. They're almost always in the top 5. In fact, I can't remember a year when they weren't in the top 5. And obviously, if you live here, you're like, stay the hell out of Port St Lucie. It makes complete sense. But you got to think, why are so many people being attracted to this area? And I think it does have to do with, you know, the schools. Yes, the schools had a bad mark on them a while ago, but I think, you know, the school board, the school system, the school leadership has done a really phenomenal job. And if you look at our school scores, not just your emotions, not your feelings, not, you know, you don't like Mrs. Denmark, who's your first grade kid's teacher, you actually look at the scores, you're going to see that this district has done a phenomenal job in turning around their schools. When you look at safety, not only are we one of the fastest growing cities, but we're consistently in the list of top cities in America for safety. when it comes to 100,000 people or more, we're one of the safest big cities in America. When you look at crimes per 100,000 people, that's amazing. And then you look at our weather, we're in paradise. And this area, one of the things I love about it is so well manicured. It's beautiful. It's got landscaping everywhere, beautiful trees, beautiful flowers, beautiful edging on everything. It's a gorgeous, clean city. We've got cops everywhere. Again, no state income tax. And I think the biggest thing that keeps the influx of people coming into Port St. Lucie specifically is that when you look at New York, California, New Jersey, and even come in state, you look at West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, or even go so far south as, Palm City, Stewart, and Jensen Beach. Port St. Lucie is not just more affordable, it's a third more affordable, right? For every $100,000 you're blowing in one of those cities, you're blowing about $600,000-$700,000, $60,000-$70,000 here. It is much cheaper, much more affordable to live here than it is in those areas. So if you want Southern Florida and you want all those things that I just mentioned, but you don't want to pay the prices, or maybe you want to cash out so you can put some cash in your bank account and you can live in a very similar home, your option is move north to Port St. Lucie, buy the same exact house or something very similar, but now I'm going to sell for 600, buy for 400, and I'm going to take that 200 grand cash and put it in my bank account and live on it. That is what's so attractive about Port St. Lucie. Now, until our prices get closer to the prices of down south, which right now they are 2/3 of the prices south. Now, obviously, that's not exactly true because it depends on which area specifically you're looking in and which area of Port St. Lucie you're looking in, a million other things. But it's roughly 2/3 of the price that it is there. So if you're going to go to that area, you're going to spend 50% more to live south of Port St. Lucie. As long as that is the case, and as long as our weather is the way it is, and our schools are doing good, and safety's where it's at, and the city is well manicured, and it looks beautiful and inviting to everybody who visits, I don't see that changing. Now, I will say in the last probably 8 months, I've seen a lull in prices. They haven't gone up, they haven't gone down. In a lot of places in America, they've come down. We're not seeing that in Port St. Lucie. We are seeing that in other areas of Florida. We're not seeing that in Port St. Lucie. Why? In my opinion, it's because of all those things I just listed. We've got people who do not want to spend the money out of in those bigger cities that are more expensive, and we've got those people wanting to cash out and move to a more affordable area, which is Port St. Lucie. So coming back to the first section of, okay, is this actually, is this the right area to buy in? I think the answer is simply from a what are the odds of growth in prices in this area aspect. I think the answer is yes. This is a great area. It's one of the best areas. And there are a ton of lists, not just this year, but several years that have said that over and over and over and over and over again. And when you look at the price jumps in this area versus the other areas on average throughout the nation, you're going to see that this area does a lot better, right? So then you've got to ask yourself about time. Is this the best time to buy? I'm going to share with you what I would share with my kids, and I'll go to the stock market because I talk about the stock market all the time, and I'm a huge Warren Buffett fan, and he has said a million times, if you look at financial advisors, some of them will beat the market over a 1-year span, but 4% will beat the market over a 10-year span, meaning 96% of them will not beat the S&P 500 with their fees included over a 10-year span. Am I going to bet that I was lucky enough to find the 4% of financial investors who can actually beat it? No, I'm not. I'm just going to get in the S&P 500 and I'm going to drive on with whatever it gets me. Now, some years it's going to go up, some years it's going to go down. But Warren Buffett has said, for those who have tried to time the market, professionals who have tried to time the market, yes, you can do it for a day. Yes, you can do it for a month. Maybe you can do it for a year, but consistently over a 10-year span, you're not going to beat the market. You're not going to figure out how to time it. So for me, if my daughters can afford a house, I'm going to push them to buy the house. And if the house is a turd and it's got ugly old wallpaper and it's peeling off in the edges and the floor has cracked tile and whatever, as long as that home is safe, I am happy with those kids living in that home. Your first home should not be beautiful. I'm not saying you have to live in crap, but I think we've got this mentality nowadays that my car needs to be beautiful. My clothes need to be beautiful. I need to have $100,000 job all when I'm 19 years old. And that's just not the case. You got to put the work in. You got to put some effort in. You got to feel a little bit of grind in you so you can get through those times. And now you've got a little bit of character. And part of that is living in a turd for a house. And what does it matter if you're living in a turd that you own or you're living in a turd that you rent? Either way, when you're younger, you're probably going to be living in a turd. And for some people, it's not when you're younger. You just have to start that process of buying at some point. Maybe it's at 30, maybe it's at 40, maybe it's at 50. It doesn't matter. But as long as you continue to rent, rent will forever go up. And it will take a larger and larger portion of your income out of your paycheck every single year. When you buy a home and you get a 30-year fixed mortgage, that mortgage ain't moving. So the taxes and insurance might go up, but that is a portion of what you're paying every month to live in that house, right? That landlord is going to raise your rent to make up for his taxes and insurance. So either way, you're paying for an increased taxes and insurance. It's either through what he's charging you or it's through your taxes and insurance. But his mortgage is not going up and your rent payment will continue to go up. So for me, it's not an emotional question of, does this suck? I mean, it doesn't matter if it sucks or not when it comes to making a logical financial decision. What matters is, when I crunch the math, does it make sense to rent or does it make sense to buy? Now, there are other alternatives. If you can live with mom and dad and you don't have the cash and you're saving up the cash, do that, right? You got a plan, stick with it. As long as you've crunched the math, stick with the math. But when you look at the second part of it, which is, does it make sense for me to mathematically buy? If you're comparing it to rent, unless you're staying there for 3 years or less, it almost always makes sense to buy. Almost always. And again, if you've got situations where you're living with mom and dad, or maybe you're one of the lucky few who's got a rental and it's a beautiful 3-bed, 2-bath with 2,200 square feet and a pool and they're charging you $1,000, sure, keep doing it. But if you're not in that very unique, very rare, very hard situation to find, and you have the ability to own, I would absolutely say buy. And yes, the prices are up, but the odds that the prices are coming down enough to where it would make sense for you to have rented are much lower than the odds of the prices going up. Certainly over the long run, over a 5, 10, 15-year span, certainly the odds of prices going up are much higher than the odds of prices going down. So if you're thinking emotionally, if you're on Facebook just trying to stir up some sympathy for the situation you're in, which a lot of people are in rough situations that absolutely are worth a little bit of sympathy and empathy, then you can complain about prices. But if you're trying to make a logical, mathematical decision for your best financial decision, I wouldn't say do it or don't do it, but I would say there's probably a 90% chance that it makes sense for you to buy. And if you're not in a position to buy, I think a lot of people will sell themselves on the story that it's too hard to buy, right? Because really, and I'm simplifying a little bit, but really it just takes cash and credit. That's it. And you need cash to rent. If you're going to rent a $2,500 place, they want to see first, last deposit. That's $7,500. You can buy a house with $7,500. All right. There are things you can do with a little bit of cash. You got to have a good, smart realtor. You got to be willing to maybe not go for the dream home. It might be your third, fourth, fifth favorite home, because we got to do a little bit of negotiating with the seller, but we can find people who can help you with closing costs. And when it comes to credit, there's really nothing that you can't fix in a handful of months if you're putting in effort, right? So you can fix all of those things. And I really am talking to you guys like I would talk to my kids, man. I would tell my kids the same thing. You need to buckle down. You need to set yourself up for success. Look at this guy, Blake Jenkins. This guy is one of the best agents with Century 21. He is the best agent with Century 21 when it comes to energy, man. One of the funnest people you ever meet. And he said, great content. More importantly, he said, math has to make sense 100%. So if you're in that position where you're like, maybe, and you don't know the math, or you want someone to help you with the math, invite me out to coffee. Invite me to your house. Let's do a Zoom, whatever it takes. And let's run your specific numbers and let's see if it works out. And if it works out, I'll support you. And use me. Don't use me as a realtor. I don't care. But I want to see people get out of rentals. and get into owning, because once you own and you see that monster check that you get after living there for 7, 8, 9, 10 years and selling, when you see that you're in a financial bind and you can actually go out and get a HELOC, you've got leverage. When you see the things you can do because you're a homeowner that you can't do when you're a renter, it is an absolute life changer. All right, I'm going to get off my soapbox. Guys, I appreciate you joining me. Thanks. We'll see you every single Friday again here at 11:15. If you've got questions for future videos like this that you'd like me to answer, feel free to send them in. You can DM them to me, or you can always email them to me at findafloridahouse@gmail.com. Guys, have a great weekend.